Hello and welcome to the URSA webinar, Coronavirus Conversations, Club Operations Part 2. At this point, it is my pleasure to hand the floor over to Joe Moore, President and CEO of URSA. Joe, if you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. First, I want to thank everyone who is on the call with us today for being part of URSA. We're all in this together, both the clubs and suppliers alike. So URSA offers many benefits for the industry. Your staff, for instance, may be interested now in professional development. URSA offers over 70 webinars in our archives, and that's completely free to the entire industry. URSA is also offering an online forum to everyone who wants to connect with other club operators. You can ask questions, share advice, you can learn from others. And again, we're opening access to that to anyone that's in the industry. Today's webinar is another way that URSA is helping during these unprecedented times. And we're extremely happy to have Colin back, part one of this webinar, through hundreds of people from 42 countries. So thank you again for being part of the URSA family. And Trevor, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Very good, very good. Thank you for those words, Joe. At this point, I'd like to introduce Colin Grant. Co-founded in 2002 by Colin Grant, the Pure Group has grown from one yoga studio with 2 teachers in Hong Kong to over 30 locations with more than 2,000 staff and around 600 yoga and fitness classes a day across Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Singapore, and New York. Through the brands Pure Yoga, Pure Fitness, Pure Apparel, Nude Food, and My Pure Yoga, Pure Group now encompasses an integrated community dedicated to helping people lead a balanced 360-degree lifestyle. Good health and athleticism have always been part of Colin's lifestyle. He played tennis semi-professionally and impressively ranked as the top-seeded player in Hong Kong for over a decade, participating in various international tournaments such as the Davis Cup and Wimbledon. Colin has had an entrepreneurial spirit since a young age, including multiple successful business ventures. He fell instantly in love with yoga in 2001. 6 months later, Pure Yoga was born. Pure Group has grown into the undisputed leader in Asia's wellness industry. Colin, if you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thank you, Trevor. First of all, I wanted to thank Joe and the team at URSA for giving me another opportunity to share the experiences that we've had actually since my last webinar about 2 weeks ago, especially Christine and John for putting this together. So what I've got a number of slides here. What I wanted to do was talk a bit about where we were 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to start on slide number 7. So since we last spoke, so basically 2 weeks ago, I explained we have clubs in Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore. Shanghai was starting to open up. Beijing was still closed. Hong Kong was open and Singapore was open. The day after the webinar, we had to close all, the evening of the webinar, we had to close 21 locations in Hong Kong. So that was 2 weeks ago. And what happened was, and this is quite relevant about perhaps some of the situations that are going on around the world with some of the operators, we received a call from a member saying that they were a confirmed case and they basically had the COVID-19 virus and they had visited our clubs. I actually received this call about 5 hours before the webinar, about 9 p.m. So we then had to, and this was the first case that had happened in the clubs since the virus started. So what we had to do was then to do a trace. And in I think one of the next slides, I share some of the materials we gave to our members to explain what happened. So what happened, we found out there was a confirmed case. He had a personal trainer 4 days earlier. We spoke to the trainer. we then had to basically make a decision that evening at about 10, 11 o'clock what to do. And what we ended up doing was we had a company to come in and disinfect the club. We actually had them on standby. So if any of you, I would advise you all to do the same thing. Have a company on standby so that you can quickly mobilize them and get them into their club. So we engaged this company. They came in, and this person who was a confirmed case had actually visited 3 of our clubs. So the clubs closed at midnight, and this company went in and disinfected all 3 clubs. They were very efficient. They used it's called a fogging method. Company's called Ecolab. They're global, and it basically kills this virus plus a lot of other viruses. And it's a kind of mist that goes around the club, and it was very effective. It gets on all the walls and curtains and ceilings. But it's so effective, and this is what we learned from this situation. They were able to do each club in 2 hours. They had 3 teams. They went in the spacesuits and the masks and everything, and we also videoed it and took photos so that we could use this later to kind of show that the method that was done. And we were able to open the clubs at 6 a.m. the following morning. The clubs had been fully disinfected. We sent an email to all our members at 1 o'clock in the morning saying that we need to report that was a case. However, we are disinfecting the clubs. We believe it's safe. We spoke to the Ecolab, and they said, listen, these clubs are clean. We could do this 10 times. It doesn't matter. They're clean. And we also put notices at the entrance to those 3 clubs. The challenge for us the next day was we were so efficient, but unfortunately, people kind of thought, listen, if you had this case, you should close for 2 days or 3 days or 4 days. You can't possibly do this overnight. I mean, the reality is you kind of can. We checked with Ecolab, and so the lesson for us was that, perception is reality. It doesn't matter if the club was clean. People thought that we perhaps could have closed for a bit longer and reopened. It didn't help when there was another case actually in a supermarket where they had somebody walk through the supermarket. They ended up closing for 3 days. But a supermarket is very different than a gym, and we used a method that was far more efficient. But the one lesson from there is, first of all, make sure you have a company on standby, because if you have a case, hopefully you don't, but if you get a case where you've been informed by a member or your local health authority that because of tracing, they've gone back and found out that this confirmed case had been in one of your clubs, you need to mobilize a company to come in. So they need to know where your clubs are, how to disinfect them. You need a quote, and you want to make sure they do the right method. And then you need to, I would recommend you video it or record it, because that is something that you may want to use to communicate to your members to say that this is what we've done. It's been very thorough. So that happened the day after. So that was 2 weeks ago. In the course of the next 4 or 5 days, so how it works, obviously different in every city, but how it works in Hong Kong is that we have the what's called the CHP, Center for Health Protection, and they have a press conference every day at 4:30, a live press conference, and they announce the new cases and what's going on with all the new cases, and they sometimes say where these people had been. So the next day, we heard there was a second case linked to the first case. So as a result, the clubs were closed. So we ended up closing all of the clubs that evening, which was obviously well, you could argue it was a tough decision, but it wasn't, because we had to put the safety first of our members and our staff. So that happened 2 weeks ago. The clubs closed down, and what I've got in some of the slides later you'll see is some of the communication that we had to do on a daily basis, both to our staff and our members, informing them of what's happening. The biggest ask for the members was, okay, please let me know if you've had any confirmed cases. Which clubs did they go to, and what did they do in the clubs? What time did they go to the clubs? Did they do Group X? Did they have a trainer? Did they use the steam or sauna or eat at Nutrfood? That was probably the most important bit of information we had to provide our members so that they could kind of evaluate their own risks. The challenge for us was that the government will not tell us who these people are. So we ended up having, I think it was four. It was four people in the first 4 days that the government announced had, over the course of the last 2 weeks, at some time, been to different restaurants and done this, and been to Pure Fitness, or it was mainly Pure Fitness actually. And so we were hearing it through the government live press conference. When we contacted the government, they wouldn't tell us who these people were because of the data privacy ordinance. So we relied on these members proactively reaching out to us and telling us that, oh, by the way, I'm confirmed and this is my membership number. We would then do a trace. And so in terms of if this was to happen in any of your clubs, it's very important you get a hold of the any confirmed case, who they are, and then all the activities they've been doing in your club, and you communicate as much information as you can get to your members and also your staff. So what we've done in the last 2 weeks, from 2 weeks ago, we would email our members almost daily for the first week or so, because there was a lot going on in terms of cases, and the situation in Hong Kong was a lot of imported cases, which are actually still going on. So that was going on in Hong Kong. And on slide 7, you'll see the most important thing to do is definitely communication to members about what's going on with confirmed cases. The next thing is making sure the staff are fully up to speed as well. So we ended up also putting all of the staff in 3 clubs, there's about 300 staff, in a 14-day home quarantine. We asked them to stay at home for 14 days as a precaution. Quite a few of the staff, the personal trainers who were the clients of these confirmed cases, ended up, a few of them going into quarantine. A lot of staff had tests, so I'm very happy to report that all of the tests came back negative from our staff, and a number of the members so far have been released, and we're waiting for the others to be released. So that's the most important, kind of the most important good news. So in the last 2 weeks, we've been very busy. Obviously, clubs closed here in Hong Kong, and then last Friday, we ended up closing all 8 of our clubs in Singapore. So as of today, 90% of our clubs are closed. A few of them are open in China, and I can talk about those because I think that's very relevant. So what we're doing now is obviously looking at our reforecasting the rest of the year, but that's a bit of a moving target because we don't really know when we're going to be opening Hong Kong or Singapore. Singapore yesterday had a spike. They had 74 cases, which was the highest single number of new cases in a day. China was closed from January 27th or 8th until, well, Beijing is still closed. So 2 of our clubs are still closed, so we're now over 2 months. And a number of the clubs have opened, but I can give you some updates on how. I think one of the key things I want to share with everybody is how we opened the clubs in Shanghai and the measures we took, and actually what's been happening in the last few days as well is also new and interesting for us. But what we're doing, we're obviously in the middle of reforecasting our numbers, looking at our P&L, and cash is king, preserving cash, because, basically 90% of our clubs have no revenue. And then also just going through all the cost lines, making sure that we're as tight as possible. The government in Hong Kong, actually Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Singapore is offering support, and they are rolling out more support measures around staff salaries, rent, and rebates, and so on and so forth. So that is also something we're looking at. We're speaking to our banks as well, seeing how they can help, because it's obviously a very, very, very difficult situation with, it's very hard to predict when they say reforecast the numbers and, put down when your clubs are going to open, because we're in unprecedented times. So what we are spending a lot of time is engaging with members. And this is a key part of our plan in preparation for our pre-opening and our opening. So that's kind of where we're at today. So all Hong Kong closed, all Singapore closed, Shanghai, Beijing, some open, some closed. So for those of you that are closed, it seems like a lot of people are at the moment around the world. So I'll spend a bit of time on this part. So for us, what we found is the most important thing is communicating and engaging with members and staff. It's very important the staff know what's going on. So we send emails almost every other day updating them on what's going on, trying to give them as much visibility on the situation as we can. And obviously the members, making sure that they're staying fit and healthy. We're doing a number of live stream classes on all the major social media platforms. The live ones on Facebook and Instagram, then we upload them onto YouTube. We promote them through the EDMs that we send to members. And our staff have been absolutely fantastic. And today I think we had almost 50 live stream classes streamed out of Hong Kong and Singapore. What we're finding is, and you guys will find the same, you've got a lot of great personal trainers and instructors, and they're the kind of customer-facing staff. So if you have your own channels, like your official Facebook page or Instagram page, you can only broadcast so much content on those. So what we did was we encouraged our instructors to broadcast on their own platforms, on their own Instagram accounts and Facebook accounts. And we would also live stream on our own, and we would consolidate two schedules. One was our official channels, and one was the teachers' private channels. And then we combine the two together, and instead of having maybe 8 to 10 classes, you end up having 50 or 60 classes a day that are live streamed. And this is something that the members are very thankful for, and they're very happy. And it also kind of keeps them together, keeps them healthy. And this is important to do, especially as a part of your pre-opening plan. And as we've been doing this for 2 weeks now. And a big part of our pre-opening plan is going to write, how do we engage with our members through all these live classes to make sure that they're eager and keen and enthusiastic about coming back. So in the middle of kind of putting that plan together about a few short video clips from all of the frontline staff to the members that we're going to kind of start working on as we get closer to when we're going to open. If I was a betting man, if we open by the end of April, another month, we might be lucky. It's tough to say. We had, I think, 51 cases yesterday. Today was 37. The cases have to come down, and then you need a period of kind of almost no cases. The last thing anyone wants to do is open too early. And when I talk about China, it's interesting because we're kind of a few weeks after opening, and some interesting things happen here. So a bit more on slide 8. So these internal communication is key, communicating with members. The other thing is managing the expectations. So we learned in Shanghai when we closed at the end of January, and our plan was to open on February 9th, and then February 20th, and then February 25th. So we ended up just saying, listen, we're closed until further notice. And so the key thing is, to support your local government and cities in getting ahead of the curve and getting on top of the number of new cases. So managing people's expectations is very important. You kind of want to make sure that they're not expecting clubs to open within a few days, because it's unlikely, especially the way this is going. To give you a sense of the numbers of the virus, so it took the first 100,000 cases, confirmed cases, took 67 days. If we go back about 3.5 months. So the first 100,000 was 67 days. The second 100,000 took 11 days. The third 100,000 took 4 days. And now I think we're going to hit a million confirmed cases today. It's probably 100,000 a day now. So we went 67, 11. So this thing is still, it hasn't peaked. So we've got to stay on top of it. I've been working from home for the last 2 weeks, actually, and most of our back office has been closed as well. When we closed the clubs, we all decided to work from home and practice social distancing and all that. We've all got to be a part of the solution. So managing the expectations for the members and staff. They're all keen and eager for us to open, but you've got to err on the side of caution there. And so our main focus now is, things have calmed down a bit from last week, is to focus on kind of the rebound plan when we open, but also the pre-opening plan. So the things that we can do, and I think for us, and it may vary from club to club and city to city, but for us a big part of our opening or pre-opening plan revolves a lot on digital fitness and doing a lot of these live stream classes, engaging and communicating with members on a regular basis so that they really are enthusiastic and excited about coming back. Now, a big part of that is all the new measures for us, all the new measures we're going to be taking for when we open. What we're looking at is we're investigating these, I think it's ultraviolet lights that kill the virus. We're finding out, just double checking the science behind that, and if they really are effective. We have companies coming in, talking to us about that and where we can put them in clubs. And also these thermal cameras. So you get them at airports where you walk in and you have a screen and you see yourself walk in and the staff have the screen behind. I think it's important for us to make sure we do a lot of things in the club to make so that when people come in, they feel comfortable. And if they feel comfortable, they're going to tell their friends, oh, did you go to Pure? They have this camera at the front, and I know everyone's going to be under temperature, and I know that they've got these new lights that do this, and you've got to communicate all of this. Hand sanitizers everywhere, hand gel bottles everywhere, extra cleaners, the smell of disinfectant and bleach and that. So we are working on all of those things around building confidence, and that will be communicated before we open and after we're open. Also, since the clubs are closed, it's a good opportunity to do a lot of training. So we've got a lot of our team doing a lot of training that is normally hard to do when the clubs are busy. The other thing we're trying to work on is how to pay staff. This is obviously a key line on the P&L, but we have to do as much as we can to protect our team, because I'm sure the same with a lot of operators around the world. All of our staff, 90% of our staff are customer facing. They're the secret to our success, and so we have to make sure that they're paid fairly, even when we're closed and we have no revenue. So again, it will vary from company. Everyone has a different capacity to pay. There may be government support and so on, but our approach is listen, we've got to do everything we can to make sure our staff come out of this okay as well. And the same with rents. We're working with landlords. Check your leases. Often in leases, there's clauses where perhaps in a situation like this, rent can be frozen. We're looking. It kind of varies from lease to lease, but definitely advise you to do that if your clubs are closed. And then a little thing, actually, someone mentioned a lot of us probably have extra aircon charges. So if you are shut, make sure that's turned off, because that's an extra bill that you don't want to be paying. And so a big focus of us, of the team now, is on this pre-opening plan, using a lot of the online channels to build community, stickiness, engagement, and using that in the right way to build up the demand for when we open. And you'll see on the next slide, on slide 9, this is some of the communication. So there's 3 images. One is the EDM, and it lists a bit of the case that we had. On the right, this is how we would explain. We dropped some data in here about particular case numbers, because all the case numbers are made public, but all is given is gender and age, and sometimes they put an address in if address is available. So what we had to do was put in the case number, the gender, and then which clubs they visited at which time of the day, and also did they do any Group X or spin classes, and basically give our members, we had to give our members as much information as possible. The key thing is transparency and sharing all this information. And so this is how we did it. And it once people saw this, they were able to make their own decision whether they felt they're at risk or they were in the club at the same time or what. But so this is what we would do every day. This week it's calmed down a bit, so we don't do the EDM2 or the communication of members every day. It's more like every 2 or 3 days. But in terms of tracing members' activity in the club. It's very, very important. The next slide is a bit of some of the live streaming classes on some of the platforms. Again, it's to inspire community. We have all the different types of classes that people want, and 3 of these, the one on the far right is actually filmed in one of our studios in Singapore, and the other 3 are actually filmed in the teachers' homes, and that's where they connect. Some of these are on our official channels, and some are on their own channels. And again, this is gonna, for us, this these live stream classes is how we're going to build community and stay in touch, and it's going to be a big part of our kind of pre-opening plan to make sure that the members are comfortable coming back. And then you'll see this is Instagram. These are Instagram screen caps of some of our posts. In terms of the one in the middle is our official channel, so these are on our own Pure Yoga, Pure Fitness official. And then the one on the right, there's 20 odd, maybe 25 classes throughout the day, different types of yoga, different times, different teachers on their own private, their own personal channels. So we kind of combine, and again, build that sense of community and keep in touch with members is critical. The next one is how you tag it. Very easy on the right. People can connect to the channels and in-app notifications, and then at the end we upload it to YouTube. So this is a very important part of what we're doing when we're closed. This, I think, is probably very relevant and important to a lot of people, because this is what we did in Shanghai as we opened the clubs, which have now been open for 2 weeks. So I think 5 of the 7 clubs have been open, are now open. So what we had to do was, and it will vary from city to city, as basically China started to have fewer and fewer cases. Shanghai actually was pretty good. They only had a couple hundred cases. And eventually they realized that, okay, they're on top of this, and they would open. And so what they did for our industry, and it varied for cinemas and restaurants and hotels and shops, but for fitness, they basically said, okay, now you're opening. These are the restrictions we will impose on you in order for you to open. Appointments only. So what we would have to do in a given day is divide the day into maybe 5 slots. Each slot was, say, 2 hours. And then in between each slot was a 30-minute break. People would have to, and we would, based on the size of the club, so one of our clubs we could only have 50 people in at a time. The other club was a bit bigger, we could have 70 people in at a time. So they would have to come in, mandatory temperature check. We didn't have showers, but actually the last few days they have since allowed showers. They have been relaxing the restrictions, so that's the good news. But there were a lot of restrictions early on. PTs, there was no touching. They had to stay 1.5 meters away from all of their clients. Different areas of the gym could only have a certain number of people. And we had to take out or cover every other spin bike in the spin studio and every other cardio machine. So I think if you look at what's happened in Shanghai, this is, again, I think each city is going to do it slightly differently, but there may be a similar approach where the city authorities will say, right, as we're on top of this now, we have to get the economy back on track, and this is how we're going to do it, whether we open how and when we open schools, cinemas, restaurants, and also gyms and fitness studios and what have you. There might be similar kind of restrictions imposed that are quite tight at the beginning, but then gradually relax over time. Other things that we had when we opened in Shanghai: no showers. We had to open later, close earlier. Everyone had to wear a mask, both staff and members. What we also did, we got everyone to sign a travel declaration, so basically saying that, or declaring that they had not traveled outside of the city within the last 14 days, or they have not been in touch with anybody, or what we call a close contact, who had traveled for the last 14 days. So we have prepared electronic versions of this that are done through the app. That's something that we still have and we will continue to have even after we've opened in Hong Kong and Singapore. And again, the mandatory temperature checks are still in place. And for us, we've been discussing internally the last few days about, when will all of these measures start being relaxed and things. And if you read more about it, I'm in the camp of I think the virus is going to be with us for a long time. I was thinking, months ago, I thought, like SARS, we could get on top of this for a few months and it goes, but I don't know. And the reason I say that is what happened in Shanghai in the last few days is we've opened our clubs have been open there for about 2 weeks, and we had quite a lot of these restrictions, but they started relaxing them. As of now, showers are allowed, our hours have been extended. People don't have to wear masks. It's not mandatory at the moment. We still make them. We still have them in place, but the government said if you want to allow them to not wear masks, you can do that. But we still have that in place. But in the last few days, so the Shanghai city government also opened cinemas around the same time that we're allowed. So that's about 2 weeks ago. Cinemas were opened, but about 4 days ago, the cinemas were told to close again. And they're also tightening up on a few other things. So they're on top of the virus. People started to open up, and then cinemas closed and a few things. So not sure why, but it's you can draw your own conclusions there. Whether some of these imported cases are of a concern, and so it seems like it's going to be. And this is still early days, right? China is one of the first kind of places that are perhaps coming out of this. There's also a county in, I think it's Henan, another province, that has gone back into lockdown. So it is a bit challenging. And so I think a lot of these measures may be around for a long time. So, our yoga classes where we normally get 50 people, sometimes 60 people in, the largest class we're allowed at the moment is 10 people. And I don't know how long it's going to be when we can get back up to those high numbers. I really don't know. And so we're starting to think about, okay, if we've got a club that normally does, say 1,500 check-ins or swipes a day, if because of capacity constraints in terms of the maximum number of people you can have in the club at a time, or class size in a spin class or group X class or yoga size, if that's greatly reduced, how do the numbers stack up if we're only allowed, 100 people at a time and the maximum class size is 20 people? It changes the whole P&L. It changes the membership base. It changes pricing. And so these are conversations we've been having internally for the last 2 days. If the new normal for maybe 3 months, 6 months, I don't know how long, maybe until there's a vaccine, right? If it is around class size of 10 people, maximum of 50 people at peak time, wow, okay. If you've got significant capacity constraints, what's the right membership fees that you can charge for that? So we only just, we're now April 2nd, so yesterday we started charging people. So in March, because of all these constraints, we didn't charge anyone. And for this month, we are starting to charge, but it's quite complicated because we've got yoga studios, we've got fitness centers. Some people have a yoga membership, some only have fitness, some have combined. Not all the yoga studios are open, only some of the fitness. So, and we have different pricing, single club, multi-club, all clubs and so on. So we've had to come up with something that is simple and easy, a flat fee, access to all clubs. But what we have done is, so for the month of April, because as people heard we're opening and they wanted to come, there was obviously a large portion of the members are kind of not sure about it, and the virus is still around, or too many people. And so what we've done is said, listen, you can either come in and pay a reduced rate for the whole month because of the slightly reduced services, or you can suspend free of charge for the month of April. If you want to suspend, you have until the 12th of April to suspend, but by all means come into the club before the 12th and come and check out the club and have a few visits, and if you like it, great, you don't suspend, but if you don't like it, you can still suspend in spite of these check-ins that you've had early on. So it's all about building trust. It's all about giving people an opportunity to come in and try and see how they feel, rather than make a decision remotely from home, like, I'm either going to go, but I'm not sure, so you know what, I'm just going to suspend. Oh, but if I can come in and try the club, let me go in and see. And so that's what we've done. As of today, the number, what's the number? It's about 20, just over 25% of the member base have suspended. It's only the 2nd of April. So by the 12th, we'll know if that's closer to 30, 40 or 50% have chosen to suspend. It's obviously going to go higher than the 25. So we don't know yet. So, but the good thing is that the clubs, there seems to be strong interest. More and more people are coming in. The sessions, because we have capacity limits, it's hard to know ultimately how many people can come, but most of the peak time sessions are full. But it's still only doing about a third of what they normally do. Hopefully, soon we can increase the capacity and let people come in, but we just got to be careful. And the government is being careful, and they're doing the right thing. So we can't move too fast. They open the cinemas, then they close them, and it's again, if we need to err on the side of caution. So there is pretty good interest for people to come back. It's only been 2 weeks. The yoga studios have only been open about 4 or 5 days. But even in those, everybody has to wear a mask. That's tough. And the class size is limited to 10 people. So it does make it a bit challenging. So we're kind of almost in the first innings of the opening. But I think one of my big points is going to be that although we've opened, that some with these imported cases, it's kind of a couple steps forward and maybe a step backwards. So it's not going to go forward all the time. And so I think be prepared perhaps to open with some of these measures that we've done up in Shanghai. And how would you have capacity constraints? How can you do appointments only? How do you do the declaration and things like that? So that's where we're at as of kind of today, the discussions we're having around if one believes that this virus is going to be with us for years, maybe longer, and if you're of that view, then you've got to take into account social distancing, mandatory temperature checks, elevated hygiene measures compared to perhaps the past. And then if you have significant capacity restrictions, how does that, what does a financial model look like? What are the membership fees that need to be charged? So that was we're still learning in Shanghai each day. And this week has been interesting because a week ago, we're thinking, okay, we're going to open and we're going to keep moving forward and gradually increase the capacity, and we add showers and take off masks. But it's kind of with what we're seeing, that it may not be just opening up every week into a better position, but we may end up taking a step backward. And then also some of these constraints may be around for a while. I don't think anyone's going to open in just full service from day one. It's going to be tough. Now, the next few slides, what I've tried to do, and this might be, I hope this is useful, is kind of documented a bit of what I've said in terms of all the things we did for the kind of opening, in terms of, if you look at slide 15, aligning with the government. A lot of this I think is going to be city driven and authority driven in terms of what you're allowed to do and how you do it and when you do it, because as we all come out, and we will all come out of this situation, the governments are going to mandate certain ways of which businesses can open. just as they're doing it now to go into lockdown, or the government an hour ago in Hong Kong announced that they're closing all bars and restaurants as of 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. They actually mandated all fitness centers, a whole 6 types of establishments last Saturday were mandated to close in Hong Kong. We actually had closed a week earlier. So they're tightening up. I think once they get on top of the new cases, once the cases go down to 0 for an extended period of, I don't know, is it weeks, they will then probably gradually allow us all to open, but perhaps not exactly as we were before. Maybe machines have to be a certain distance apart, maybe class sizes, maybe capacity. I don't know what's going to happen in Hong Kong, but that's what happened in Shanghai. And so if you look at slide 15, I think there's 8 slides here. What I tried to do for everybody is to break down all the different things that we looked at in preparation for opening, and all the measures. So one of the key slides is, again, all the things you need in terms of opening, member support, what we did on slide 17, no charge for the first few weeks, and offered free suspension. And if you're going to get hundreds, or if you're going to get thousands of people doing suspension or doing different things, you've got to obviously beef up your membership team to manage all of these cases, and customer service team and things. We were able to automate a lot of that. So page 18, slide 18, you'll see this is the kind of protocol we did. A lot of these measures you guys should think about, because they may be needed or required, and some will take a bit of preparation and a bit of time. So it's good to get a head start there. And then again, maintaining social distancing, things that have to be done in the club. So you'll see the first one, pre-booking workout sessions through the app. We had to build the whole IT infrastructure behind there, limited to was 50 people per session. Each session had to be 90 minutes, and in between each session, we had to do a full cleaning of the club. Second point, divide the gym floor is divided into clear zones with certain capacities. No close contact, alternate cardio machines, no contact between PT and clients, no adjustments in yoga, group classes, scheduling. These are all the things we had to do. Most of these are still in place. The masks we're allowed to take off at the moment, but we've kept them on. We've asked everybody to keep them on. Again, blocking changing rooms, the lockers, blocking out. And so all of these things, I think you guys I would recommend you start going through all of these measures. What it's going to do is going to make sure you have a safe environment for everybody, but it's going to send that message to your members. And once they come in and see all the measures you've taken, we're actually going to do a few more based on the kind of what we're hearing is happening up in Shanghai. But the members are going to want to see a lot of these measures that you're taking. If you look at slide 20, all the different things in terms of hand sanitizers. We took out hairbrushes. We have these studio passes, so if you booked into a class, you get a pass. We stopped that. All these little things add up, and it's meaningful, and it's very important. So what I'm hoping is, and then the last slide, 21, this large section, please have a look. These are things that we did that we found to be very effective, and some of them did take a bit of time. So you may want to get a head start, but you've got if I can wrap up now, if you've got your pre-opening plan, what you need to do between now and when you think you're going to open, just start getting everything ready, mobilizing your team. You can do some training, but obviously engaging with the members as much as you can through online content. And then deciding what are your operations going to be and services going to be once you open. You may want to start speaking to your local authorities about, it may be too soon though in some areas, but what do they think, because they may end up mandating certain restrictions. So if they do that, you may want to start having those conversations now so that you can plan and get ahead and prepare, because some of these things will take time. So I think those last slides, I think, are the important ones in preparation for the opening. But as I said, the key learning for us in the last 2 or 3 days in Shanghai has kind of been, it's not going to go forward all the time. There's going to be days where perhaps the authorities are going to come and maybe ask you to reduce the capacity or turn off the showers or do something like that, because they don't want another spike. They don't want more cases, and you've got to be extra careful. So just thinking about some of these restrictions may be in place for us for quite a while. A week ago, I thought, we're going to be moving forward and making good progress, but it doesn't seem like it might be. Now, this is for us in Shanghai. It's our first market we've started to open, so we're doing what we can. But we'll get through this. It's just not going to be smooth, or it's going to take a bit of time. So that's kind of where we're at in the business today. Closed in Singapore, closed in Hong Kong, preparing for the opening, and then in Shanghai doing what we can to make sure the clubs are safe for staff and members. So that today is the update. I hope it's been useful. I hope you guys are safe, and we're in this together. So I finish there, and I will, Trevor, back over to you.
Very good, very good. We want to invite attendees to ask your questions using the Q&A window. With that, the first question today: how big are your clubs in square feet and meters? And when you mentioned 50 to 70 people were allowed in a club at one time.
So those clubs were about, for 50 people, it's about 2,500 square meters. And for 70 people, it's about 3,300 square meters. And those were the numbers: 50 in the smaller one, 70 at any one time in the big one. Yep.
Very good, very good. What do you recommend for a brand new fitness studio that was supposed to open this month with no members?
I mean, obviously, it depends where you are in the state, or at what stage you are in the number of cases. It will depend very, very much on that. I think what you can do is focus very much on hygiene and all the measures you can take, so that when you do open, you are of the highest standards with regards to hygiene and member safety. And if you do that, you're starting off in a very good position. The number one thing people are going to want to know when they come in is, right, what are all the safety measures? What are you doing to make sure the club is cleaned? We've actually added 3 slides to our sales presentation for new members just about that. We put them in now because it's not price, it's hygiene first. So get on top of all the hygiene measures. That's a key thing.
Excellent. And the next question: do you have aquatics, therapy pools, or spas in your club? And have you reopened any bodies of water?
No. We do have an endless pool in Singapore, but that club is closed. Actually, we do have a swimming pool in one of our clubs in Hong Kong. We plan on keeping it closed for a few months after we open.
Very good, very good. And what has been your experience with securing PPE, personal protective equipment supplies, for your clubs? And do you have a strategy with vendors to ensure you have appropriate inventory?
Yeah, we started looking around in December, so we were okay. We actually had some stock. We went through SARS, so we had a lot of this in stock. We already had a list of reliable vendors that we sourced from that were on top of it, and we had built up good relationships with them. But it is tough now because you've got to be careful if you're sourcing, because also there's a lot of scams out there now. So be very careful. It's always good to get referrals from people that you know on good suppliers. I would use referrals. There's some people out there that are you've got to be very careful.
What does your temperature check process look like, and are your members cooperative?
That's a good question. So when we discussed this internally, and I thought it may raise more questions, or we may be making people a bit more paranoid. So I waited a few days, and we ended up rolling it out, I think, the end of January. It was very well received by members. Very well. It was one of the key things that made them feel comfortable. So we have these thermal guns, they're handheld, and you get the ones where you put them up close to the forehead. They don't touch the forehead, and they give you the temperature. I believe our setting is that basically if someone comes in and they're 37.5 or above, we ask them to either if they still want to come in, they've got to sit down, and we give them another temperature check within 5 minutes. And if they're above again, we ask them not to come in the club. We don't let them in. And we've had, one or two a week maybe, and we're talking a couple of 100,000 check-ins. So it's very low, but it is a good precaution that members really appreciate. But remember, this is in Hong Kong, where nearly everyone's wearing a mask. People like to see these precautions, so it depends very much on what the norm is where you are. But I can say it's worth doing from my experience over here.
Are you able to have an idea of how many of your members are taking online classes as well as new members signing up online?
No, it's very, we don't track that because at the moment we've been doing classes on Instagram and Facebook. All I know is our fans have increased 30-40% in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We have My Pure Yoga, which is our own website where we have video classes. The number of people registered has doubled in the last week. So a lot of people are stuck at home and they want to stay healthy, and so online digital fitness is massive. So if you have a platform, I think it's well worth investing.
Excellent. A two-part question. Are team members and members using the same mask for many days or a new mask each day? And did you purchase the mask or require these team members to bring their own?
So good question. The masks we have, they're only for daily use. And so at the end of each day, they have to be thrown away. And we provide masks for all our frontline staff. Yep.
And have you stopped towel service? Are clubs not going to offer towel service because of hands folding towels?
No, we actually in Shanghai when we first opened, we didn't have towels. I believe we do have towels now. That is something that was one of the restrictions that was released. But our towel attendants have they wear gloves, so they take a lot of precautions. And remember, these mandatory temperature checks and the declaration forms that are filled out by members, our staff fill them out as well. So if any staff is on leave or they come back, they've got to go into home quarantine for 14 days. And all staff, when they come in duty, they have to have their temperature checked. In the back office, I go up to the counter every morning, get my temperature checked myself. So we apply the same standards to our teams as well as our members.
Excellent. How did you set up members making appointments for them to come in?
So we have our own app. You can do a whole host of things in it. It's a membership card built in. They can book classes, and so our IT department basically built something in so that if they wanted to check in, they would have to click on the location, and then they would have to click on the time slot, and then they would have to reserve a slot if there was one available. But we had to build our own. That's why quite a few of these things it takes time. It takes time, so you may want to get a head start and start working on some of those things now.
And are you charging for any digital offerings?
No. At the moment, it's all about engagement. It's about building brand loyalty. People are very stressed out now. It's a difficult time. We want to be there for them as best we can, offering the best service. So we've decided not to charge.
Excellent. Another two-part question. Between different instruction, how do you enforce physical distance, specifically for someone like a tennis operator or for blocking off every other spin bike? What were your methods there?
So for spin bikes, we would cover them with a towel. Quite simple. For just social distancing, there's no, it was 1.5 meters in Shanghai. And we did some training with our staff about what they should do. We would walk around the club and say, right? If there's somebody there, first of all, this is exactly, we would measure it out, and we ask people to stand a certain distance apart and say, right, we want you to get 1.5 meters apart. And they would, with the training, they would get a feel for it. And then we would do some role playing around the clubs about different scenarios, so they would understand kind of how to manage all the scenarios in a club with social distancing. But a bit of training was definitely needed.
This user is asking a question. We're a $10 a month gym with high volume of members, so charging less is a hard option to maintain financials. What would you suggest for clubs like this?
Yeah, at the lower price, it's a tough one, tough question. It's a good question though. I mean, you've got to look at the size of your club. I think you've got to work backwards. You work out based on the size of your club and the layout, and what you need to do to make sure it's a safe environment. And based on that, what is your capacity? And then, because we're doing this exercise right now, so what we're looking at is, okay, based on the club, based on the capacity, based on how many members can get in, okay, how do we charge? You could consider, instead of $10 a month, it's $1 a visit. I mean, we have a membership model where it's a monthly fee, and we don't like the pay as you use. It's not something that we do, but in this interim measure, if we've got pretty significant restrictions around capacity, a different financial or different way of charging may be required for the short term or during this period. And those are things that we're discussing internally now. So you may have to look at something like that, simply because of the capacity restrictions.
What is the plan if this crisis were to come back in September, October?
Assuming it goes away by then, to some degree, where, I don't know, I mean, it's hard. The question is, what does it look like when we kind of come out? Is it going to go away? And listen, I'm not a doctor, but you can read all the articles. There's a lot of people that say, listen, this is going to be like the flu. There will be a vaccine at some time, but it's going to be hard to totally get rid of this virus. I think, I mean, all I can say is what we're doing. We're getting prepared for a lot of these restrictions around capacity and class usage and class size and what have you, of how do we run our business under those conditions for an extended period of time. An extended period of time, is that 3 months or 6 months? I don't know. I think quite a few of these restrictions will have to stay in place for maybe a bit longer, whether it's the mandatory temperature checks, or maybe some of the classes will have to be a bit smaller than normal, maybe not down to 10 people instead of 50. But it's really hard to predict. I think you've got to look at your business with a lot of these restrictions, perhaps, that I've mentioned that we're under at the moment in Shanghai, and they will loosen a bit. But what's the right financial model for that? How do we charge for that? Can I maybe work backwards first?
Gotcha. And with that, do you intend to raise the price to attend group classes if restrictions are maintained over the medium term?
Well, all of our group classes are included in the membership. That's our model. So we definitely couldn't charge for them. So we're in the middle of working out, based on the current restrictions that we have, what's the best way of charging members. And this is a conversation we started yesterday, so we're kind of in the middle of it. If I do another one of these, I can share. But we're in the process of trying to work out. It's a different financial model, very different. So we're trying to fully understand all the implications on our business.
All right, very good. And the last question for today. Do you have enough time slots for members that want to come into the club, or do you have to allocate? And if you do have to allocate, how do you do that?
No, so we have, I think it was 4 slots, and they would choose. They get to choose, but the prime time, so the lunchtime and the evening time would. I mean, it's 50 or 70 people. There's not many for our clubs, so they would get full, and then they would go on a wait list, or they would have to go into another session, time slot that they didn't prefer. The prime times got full, but this is quite a lower kind of threshold that we would normally have. Normally would get maybe double 150 people in at that time. So we would have expected the peak time. To be honest, the actual take-up was pretty good in Shanghai. People came back quite quickly. I think if the restrictions are lifted a bit, we'll definitely be able to fill those slots. It's a question of when, and I think a fair bit of it was that when people first came into our club that we opened 2 weeks ago, they did feel comfortable. They shared that on social media. We saw a lot of those posts. We got some good press, and just the word of mouth was positive. And that, word of mouth is very important in people's eyes. If they hear what their friends are saying and they feel comfortable, they will come. They will come with them, and they will also take it. So I think the peak time was definitely busy, but we wouldn't allocate them. They would try and choose.
Very good, very good. Well, those are all the questions we have for today.
Okay. I just wanted to say again, thank you to Ursa. Thank you for this opportunity to Joe, to Christine. Thank you, Trevor, and also John Holsinger. Thank you. I hope this has been helpful. I've tried to put in quite a tricky 2 weeks, quite dynamic, a lot of different things going on. But those slides towards the end, have a bit of a read of those. Some of these measures will take a bit of time, and you've got to be nimble, you've got to be flexible, because this is constantly changing. Even in the last few days, we've had a number of kind of new things that have popped up. But I hope it's been helpful, and all the best. And we'll get out of this, and we'll come out of this stronger. That much I know. So thank you.
Very good, very good. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Before you shut down, please take a moment to fill out the survey you'll see on your screen. We appreciate your feedback that you can provide to help us improve future webinars. Thank you all for joining us today and for your participation. Also, thanks to Colin for sharing his expertise. We hope you have a great day.